Well, you don't even have to meet our guest today, and you already know that he's a good guy. Why is that? Because he spells Bryan the right way. And it might be because I'm a little bit of biased here because my name is Bryan with a Y as well, but that's besides the point. This is Bryan Carter, two-time Emmy Award winner. He is a national network sports television producer, currently predominantly working with Fox, ESPN, the Big Ten Network, and CBS, but his career spans all different sports. And the focus of this conversation is to point out stories of triumph for him, what he has overcome. This is the On to Something podcast, and certainly Bryan is on to something or two. I'm Bryan Fenley, a national anchor at Fox Sports Radio, and I'm on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. So I'm really looking forward to this, Bryan. Two Bryans discussing the business. And I wanted to start here. For somebody like yourself who has made his way to the top of the business, and I know you're very humble, but you have made it to the top of the business. When people get to the top, there can be this philosophy of, hey, I already know a lot. I kind of have it all down, but I don't see any of that from you. You going back to school after all of these years, what has channeled that desire and fueled you to have that never ending, undying love of learning to this point?
Interesting question. Honestly, I taught school as a sub right after I graduated from college. I was doing some freelance stuff for ABC Sports as a runner, and I needed something to do during the week. I just graduated from college, so I was a sub for middle school and high school, and I liked it. You know, it was okay, and I kind of connected with the kids. I always kept that in the back of my mind that maybe I'd go back at some point and give it a shot. And as our business has evolved, and you get to a certain age, you got to think, hey, what's the next chapter? I'm not one to retire and go play golf. So I thought, well, why not teach? So I looked into it, and you need an advanced degree to teach at the collegiate level. I really wasn't interested in teaching, high school. So I'm working on getting my master's at IUPUI in sports journalism. And into the first part of your question, as far as thinking that you know it all, whatever, Bryan, I still get butterflies every single show. I mean, and like crazy butterflies, like almost nauseous sometimes. And after 1,000 whatever shows, and I'm still nervous, and I never feel comfortable. I'll tell you that.
But I feel like that is a good mindset to have, because then you are fully focused and mindful of what is happening. And when you're not complacent, then you're able to act on the fly correctly because of a live broadcast and things that can happen unpredictably. What have you learned from studying what you are working on as far as the coursework that even after all of these years, you didn't pick up?
We're studying journalism. So one of the things we're really focused on is some of the things that have to do with frankly, Black America and Black Lives Matter. Yeah. And it's kind of given me a new viewpoint on some things that I don't want to say I was dismissive of. I was just frankly ignorant. And we studied Jackie Robinson's career. We've just studied some things recently with just the whole BLM movement. And like I said, it's opened my eyes to how others have come up and what they're still dealing with a little bit.
Yeah, the empathy gene comes out in large part, certainly when we get to learn the history of things. And like we said, it's crazy, Bryan. We thought we were taught something growing up, and we were, but it's now coming out. There's so much more to the equation. And I think that, as that progressive society, learning what everybody went through, the struggles, is so important to the growth of our society. And I'm so glad that, that I have the opportunity to do that. And you certainly are as well. We learn about others because life is not all the same for everybody. No. But what I do know, and what I do know is that this is a business that takes a lot of grind. and a lot of grunt work. And people will see the achievements and where people are. But for you, Bryan, it wasn't always this easy. You know, there were trying times.
Oh yeah.
And what were those moments like for you when you were trying to break through and where there was self-doubt? And this is well before you were the established name you are, but how did you handle yourself in those situations early on?
Well, it was a struggle. I started off as a runner with ABC Sports, and when I just got out of college in the early '80s. Well, you only had the networks, and ESPN was just in its infancy. So the opportunities are, well, now there are probably 10 times more opportunities in sports television than there were at that time. It was basically join the networks, move to New York, or nothing. And there were a lot of Ivy League grads getting those jobs, and just some kid from the Midwest. So um, I went for, well, it took 6 years before I actually landed a full-time job with Turner Sports. And like I mentioned earlier, I taught school, I worked in sales, I painted a friend's house. I was doing anything I could, still working on some network stuff on weekends. But yeah, Bryan, it was. I reached a point where I was living in San Diego, and I had a gig that was canceled. A big gig that I was looking forward to. I was going to be gone for like a month, and it got canceled. And I remember driving back to my apartment, and I sat in my little Toyota Corolla and just started crying. What am I going to do now? So I said, well, I'm going to give this one more month. And prayers answered, man. I got a call 3 weeks later from Turner Broadcast, from a good friend, and he was getting promoted, and said, hey, I'm going to recommend you for the job if you want it. And flew back to Atlanta, and 2 weeks later, I'm moving cross country to go to work for Turner. So,
what was the high and low of that experience? Because here you are thinking that you're not sure where things are going and that there might be a dead end.
yeah.
And there's the low emotionally, and then the high, like in such a short span of time. Like, what is it living in your mindset when you go from, I don't know where this is going, to this is the start of something that I needed, and this is what I've always dreamed in doing?
Yeah. Yeah. It was just that. It was just the lowest of lows to really the highest of highs. Sharing a condo with a college friend and really making very little money at the stuff I was doing, to making a little bit more money. But now I'm doing SEC football in the NBA, and a single guy living in Atlanta with this kind of a job, and life was good. So yeah, I think perseverance is what you learn. Just never give up. Just never give up and keep believing.
Bryan Carter is with us, esteemed television producer, going back to school as well. I'm Bryan Fenley, an anchor at Fox Sports Radio. So you hit on perseverance. There are so many times in life where stuff like this happens, where you want to do something and you give yourself an amount of time, and if it doesn't work out, people decide to give up. Why did you not give up, Bryan? Because there were opportunities for you to do that early on, and obviously it's paid off in a big way ever since. But what mentally told you to stay with the business, even when you were a runner and you were making what, $35 a day and just getting by, to say, I'm going to hang on here because I think one day it will all work out for me?
Well, I think a big part of it was, I was working as a runner, and then I got the opportunity to work on, it was ABC's B college football game. Keith Jackson play-by-play on the A game, Al Michaels on the B game, a young Al Michaels. And so I worked on that crew, and I'm being flown around the country with ABC Sports, and Al was an up and comer, and we're doing some pretty big college football games. So I got a taste of what the business was could be like. And I got the opportunity to do both the Olympics in '84 in Sarajevo, and then Los Angeles, and a lot of other, really nice shows in between. So I knew what it could be, right? But so I didn't know what else I'd do that would ever satisfy me, honestly. That was a big part of it. It's just like, I know I can do this. If somebody just really gives me the chance, I'll be okay. But that's what kept driving me, honestly. And you know what? I knew what else I could do. Like, what else am I going to do? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before you got into your career, I know there were instances in signs of your persistence and your drive, even before your business life took off. If I met a young Bryan Carter, a teenager, adolescent, youngster, where would I have seen his persistence show up so that it would tell me one day, I know that he is going to make it in whatever field he goes in one day?
Man, I don't know if I had that moment. I think one thing is my parents divorced when I was young. And so I didn't have that father figure around, but I did have a drive to succeed. And that's one thing that your dad kind of helps with, kind of give you that kick in the butt. And uh, so, yeah, I always, I tried to hang with the right crowd, tried to do the right thing. Not saying I didn't get support from home, because I had, still had great family and good grandparents and all that. But yeah, I can't really point to anything specific necessarily, Bryan. But
Yeah.
um, I think the work thing and just, not giving up on the career, that'd be the main thing I would point to.
So, Bryan, with all of the events that you've worked on, and as far as you've made it in the business, what still surprises you in what you've been able to pull off to this day, where you still say, my goodness, look at where I got to? And you sit back and you say, kind of, wow, you soak
Yeah.
it in a bit.
Yeah. One thing I try to do now, the number of remote truck events that we do, which if people don't know, there's a lot of productions that are done in-house now. So like with Big Ten Network, I do a lot of events out of Chicago in their studio. 2 weeks ago, I did a football game at Florida for ESPN. And, about 45 minutes before air, I snuck out of the truck and I just walk into the stadium and just look around, and there's 80,000 Gator fans, doing the chop. And I'm like, how cool is this that I still get to do this? And anytime I do a truck show, especially in like big football stadiums or basketball arenas, I always make it a point to try to just sneak in, see the crowd, and just feel the vibe, feel the energy. And it still gets me that, my gosh, I'm getting paid to do this. It's still fantastic.
What must have been fantastic, and Bryan Carter is with us, television producer extraordinaire. I'm Bryan Fenley, is getting to see Steve McNair
Oh
and
yeah.
his career take off. You were right there on the front lines watching what he was able to do at Alcorn State and then grow from there. What was it like taking in a young Steve McNair?
That's one of the more interesting experiences of my career. And again, it's the first event I ever produced, so you got that too.
Yes.
But yeah, going to Lorman, Mississippi, which is 3 hours from anywhere, and just getting a feel for frankly the impoverished background that he came from, and just that area of the country. It was pretty amazing, and you knew you were witnessing history just because of the numbers he was racking up, and that's why we were televising the games. ESPN2 was in its infancy at that time, and they were looking for programming, and it's like, hey, this guy McNair is going to break all these records. Let's put him on TV. So that's where I got the opportunity to go produce those games. The final game we did, it was Alcorn State versus Jackson State, and it's their annual, they're big rivals. They play their final game of the year in Jackson at I think it's War Memorial Stadium, but holds 50,000 plus, and it's sold out. And it's an all African American crowd, and that really being one of the few white guys walking around was eye opening, and that's something I'll never forget. And just but the passion that the fans had, and he was a cool guy. You knew he was going to be all right.
sports brings us all together, which,
Yeah.
from wherever background you are, and it's such a unifier, as you know, and I feel like that is such an important fabric of us as sports fans as we see all this take off. I got one more question for you, and Bryan Carter's with us. I'm Bryan Fenley. How much of your sense of self do you throw into your work and the identity of who you are? Like, we are our work a lot of times because of the hours we put in and the amount of time that we spend. So what is it like for you to, I guess what I'm trying to say here is your identity, how much is it attached to all the work you do? Because some people without their work, that's their whole life. And I would think that in the career that you have where you're working the long hours, that you really have to love what you do considering the long hours. So I guess the pride you have for the work you do and the sense of self that you get from your work, what does that look like?
Well, I've learned, I think, over the course of time to not put my full identity into work. And I've worked with a lot of guys that do that. And they're the ones that kind of, when things maybe go off the rails during a broadcast, they're the first ones to, explode and yell at people. And I've worked with a lot of those guys. And I like to think I've learned over the years that's not how you operate. That's not how you get people to be their best. And so I try to be an empathetic, I hate to use the word boss, but you are in charge. Be sensitive to people. Know that it's just TV, and at the end of the day, we're all going to go home, and we're all going to wake up just fine the next day. Even though you don't feel like that after some shows, but I think that's the best answer I can give you. Is that it's I don't allow myself to get totally enveloped into that now, especially once you have family and kids. You just reprioritize life.
And you've done that by also adding on the school part, which I'm excited to see. And as far as you getting to that next degree, which is so inspiring considering all that you've done, but to know that there's still so much more out there to learn, and you're soaking all that in, and then having all that knowledge, throwing it into your work. But then also the ability to want to give back. You love teaching. And I guess if I may just squeeze one more question in, why is it so important for you to give back and to mentor? Because I feel like that is certainly a core value for you. And not everybody does that, Bryan, but for you, it's very important to have that selfless mindset that you channel on a regular basis.
What do you want to be remembered for? I ask myself that question frequently, and nobody's going to say, "Wow, he produced a heck of a show." Whenever it's you want to leave a lasting legacy, and I feel that way with my kids, my family, and maybe this is a chance to do it somewhere outside of that. I hope. Congratulate me when I actually do finish this master's. With the bear, man.
Well, Bryan, you are making a lasting impact on everything that is in your vicinity, everything that is in your area code, anything you touch, it is definitely, you are making a lasting impact, and the business, the world is better off with everything you are doing in it. Bryan Carter, producer extraordinaire in television. I'm Bryan Fenley. Thank you so much for telling your story. And I had such a great time getting a chance to talk with you.
You're too kind, Bryan. I really appreciate it.